Jujutsu Kaisen off a historic run with the Shibuya incident having everyone on the edge of their seat week to week. More than likely it's gonna win anime of the year for 2024 and just released a classic video game. Alright, I can stop there. Let me stop lying. Nonetheless, Jujutsu Kaisen is on the path to being the greatest anime of all time, but there are things that could possibly get in its way. In this video, I'm going to dive into both the first and second seasons of Jujutsu Kaisen and also some of the manga spoilers to talk about the flaws within the show. I also want to compare it to 3 other anime slash manga, those being Demon Slayer, One Piece, and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And when I compare them, it's not to say which is better than the others, it's to reference the strong points of each of these anime and why people love them and how that could play a factor in JJK going down as an all-time great, because obviously most anime have other high points than one another, and that biasness of what people actually like a factor in where they rate this show all time. So we're gonna use these 3 animes to reference what JJK could possibly be lacking, what's their strong suit, and how they could bring it all together to ultimately end up being the GOAT. Now I'm gonna try to be based, logical, and give actual constructive criticism without letting my own biases run into this video, but nonetheless I know it's gonna ruffle a lot of feathers when I reference other people's favorite shows. The anime community has just gotten to so much level of elitism and this cult-like following with these specific shows, but nonetheless I hope people could see it from a logical standpoint of all the details I point out with each of these shows and the flaws within JJK that can stop it from overlapping some of these shows in the long run. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, before we get into the flaws I of course mentioned we have to dive into, let's start off why everyone loves JJK. Where else do we start but the fights? JJK honestly is already an all-time great when it comes to pure battle shonen. You won't find one better, especially in this new generation of anime. With the choreography mixed with the animation, there's not too many anime going on right now that can stand up to what JJK is able to do with their fights. And we have a ton of them within the first 2 seasons, and if you guys read the manga, then you know how many more crazy fights we got coming down the pipeline. So it's only going to get more and more hype as the show continues. But just going over the fights within the first 2 seasons, it showcased the uniqueness of JJK. I think it has a pretty cool power system that some people are talking in the conversations of Nen and Hunter x Hunter. I wouldn't go that far, but I definitely do like the premise of cursed energy, everyone's unique powers and abilities, and the way they're able to shape it to maximize their own capabilities. For my anime onlys, I could tell you guys right now, from a pure fighting perspective, it will never drop off from this point on. After Shibuya, it stays pretty much consistent when it comes to the fights, the hype, the intensity, the tension, everything, especially with fights like Gojo versus Sukuna coming down the pipeline, as well as where we are currently within the manga with Yuta and Yuji versus Sukuna. And we also didn't even get the introduction of characters in the anime yet with Hikari and Kashimo. So you guys have a lot that you're gonna love in the next few years. Only mainstream anime that can match the pure spectacle that JJK has in his fights is Demon Slayer, but even then JJK is able to pack in more tension and high stakes than Demon Slayer ever could. And that's reason number 2 people love JJK: threats, villains, and high stakes. It feels like these villains are actually despicable, that you're not safe at any moment. Spoilers, like I already said in the intro, in the Shibuya incident, we witnessed 2 huge deaths that greatly impact our main character Yuji in the foreseeable future. And that's amazing, because this new era of shonen sucks at making the characters feel like they're in actual danger or that the villains are actually menaces, that anything scary or drastic will ever happen to any of these characters. Yet they all try to give you the illusion that what's going on is really as dire and as earth-shaking as it seems on screen. But if you take a step back. It really isn't. It's been years since a death has impacted me in an anime like Naname's did in JJK. The fights and just the pure adrenaline that they're able to rush through your body with these high stakes, high intensity, high tension, actually menacing moments from all these characters throughout the story. Now, be real with me. Y'all think I did enough glazing to talk about the flaws now that people won't be mad? Be real. People are probably still gonna get mad. Let's get into it. Now, remember when I talked about comparing it to One Piece and Demon Slayer? Well, here we are. Demon Slayer, everyone considers to be a pretty straightforward story. Really not a lot of depth. Get to point A to point B. We know where the story starts and finishes. But what it lacks in its depth and content, it makes up for in its amazing fights, choreography. Just, it looks beautiful and stunning just to see it all on the screen at once. And that's a big reason for the anime being as big as it is now, having one of the highest grossing anime movies of all time. It's the definition of a spectacle when you're watching a fight in Demon Slayer. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have One Piece that's beloved for its complex storytelling that spans over 2 to almost 3 decades by now. People fall in love with the journey and the show as it goes on and on and on, as I think it's now reaching over 1100 episodes. But for One Piece, the fights can kind of be a little lackluster. Now, One Piece fans, don't come for me. Look at my anime wall. I got a whole section just for One Piece. I love One Piece, but we gotta be real. The fights, lackluster. Some of you are probably asking, what does this have to do with JJK? I tend to find myself having JJK sit into the middle of this chart between Demon Slayer and One Piece, having the best of both worlds, but also the worst. And I'll explain what I mean by that. You remember when I mentioned earlier that after the Shibuya incident, that from this point forward, the story does not die down at all? I was just referring to purely the fights. The intensity of them never ever stop. But as far as a storyline perspective, it leaves a lot to be desired. So spoilers for these few examples. Some is gonna be from season 2 of JJK, some is gonna be manga spoilers. So for starters, in season 2, when Todo shows up, helps Yuji beat Mahito, and of course he loses his arm in the process and no longer has his boogie woogie. After this point, Todo, I don't think he gets mentioned ever again in the manga. He's just gone. It's as if he's not even a character. And some people might not care about this, but he was one of my favorite characters, and I feel like this is something that should be talked about, should be mentioned, but it just never is. And once again, I mentioned earlier that the stakes are high within this show, but it's a double-edged sword. It's nice to have ramifications and consequences with your actions and what's going on within the story, as I mentioned with the deaths of Nanami and Nobara, but Todo losing his hand would have been perfectly fine if they didn't just cast him away. A prime example I could use is Rock Lee in Naruto. After his fight against Gaara, where we see him put his all into it, use the gates, all that to ultimately end up losing, and he almost could never fight and battle again. But we got to see him persevere through all of that, with him watching Gaara versus Sasuke, and Sasuke using his movements and techniques. He wanted to make up for all of that, and we got to see him bounce back to be able to fight. Now, of course, it didn't pan out in the long term, but that journey we got to see him go on. With Todo, they just don't give us that opportunity to see him, even if it's to see him retire and not come back. We just get, oh, his boogie woogie is gone, so he's gone. The same as in season 2 when Toji returned and he beat Dagon, and then he was beating the shit out his son Megami. Everybody was like, oh shit, he's fighting his son, he don't know who he is. And then after beating the shit out of him for a while, he finally asks his name, and when he tells him Fushiguro, he was like, oh shit, this is my son. And Toji takes himself out. This was a hype, cool ass moment in the anime. So you go further in the manga, and Megumi still doesn't know or realize that this was his dad. No one ever tells him. Something like this is just left to the dust. And I feel like once again, it still could be a cool moment when you're watching it, but in a long run, the moment has less impact in my opinion. And the biggest factor of all this is spoilers for the manga. Of course, you guys know in season 2, Gojo was sealed. When he is unsealed and he's gone to go fight Sukuna, they have a month time skip to jump to the fight when they could have had so much character building within all that time frame, but they decided to just gloss over it to get right to the fight. We don't really see Gojo and them talk about Nanami and Nobara or any of the impact, what was going down while he was gone, any of that. We really don't get none of that. It jumps straight into the fights. Some people might not think this is important or really helps with the characters, develop them and the story, but it really does. I'm gonna give you a prime example. Kakashi, from the beginning, we all know he's cool, just like with most JJK characters. He's as cool as could be. He's the nigga they're basically learning from, he's the Gojo of that series early on. Not to say he's the strongest, but he's the cool guy. But as the story goes along, we get bits and pieces of Kakashi through lines telling us his personality and who he is. When he explains the Bell test to them, tells them the scum line about saving your friends and sticking together, all the way into the Sasuke retrieval arc, he's telling Kakashi, what if I killed everyone you love? And Kakashi's telling him, everyone I love is already gone. You're a little too late for that. And we don't get it into the end of the first Naruto anime before Shippuden. That's when we get Kakashi's backstory of Ren, of Obito, of getting his Sharingan, of Minato being his sensei and dying. We get all the loss, and that getting all those moments put into perspective everything we learned about Kakashi over the course of the entire show. For JJK, it's not really none of that. And there's really no reason they shouldn't have done this, because once again, manga spoilers, but Gojo was only sealed for about 20 to 21 days or something like that. And to further emphasize my point, because some of you like it was only a month time skip, I'm about to list off a bunch of things that took place within only just those 20 days Gojo was sealed. So gigantic spoilers for this section. Within those 20 days that he was sealed, 2 mini arcs and 1 giant arc being the Culling Games took place. We have Yuta with the Itadori extermination arc, taking out Itadori, tricking the higher ups so he could fulfill his binding vow. We also had introductions of characters like Akari and Kashimo, who are going to become vital and strong sorcerers that you guys gonna love, as I mentioned in the fight section earlier in the video. We also get a gigantic battle between Yugi and Kenjaku, as well as the complete slaughtering of the Zenin clan. And all those things I just mentioned weren't even the most important things that happened within those 20 days. The most important being Sukuna taking over Megumi's body. So all that happened within 20 days of Gojo being sealed, and you guys are gonna sit here and tell me that they couldn't have packed in so much character interaction within that month time skip. So it's no reason they should have skipped over the month. And we know showing the backstory and development can work, because we literally saw it in Jujutsu Kaisen season 2 with the hidden inventory arc. Watching Gojo and Geto being teenagers, being the 2 strongest, working together, the introduction of Toji, even a little backstory on Megumi because of Toji dying by Gojo's hand. Those added pieces of information on who these characters used to be and how it shaped where they are now, it helps so much within the story. So I think this month time skip is filled with wasted potential. Like, so much could have been done within this month. And who knows, I'll say it now, we might get flashbacks still showing us things that took place during that time skip, because once again, and spoilers hopefully for the last time, where we are currently in the manga, chapter 250, Yuta and Yuji versus Sukuna, and it's just revealed to us or shown to us all these curse techniques that Yuta is able to copy. And currently we really don't have much on how he got this ability or how he's able to copy everyone's curse technique, so it's a lot of speculation around it. And also, when prompted by Sukuna asking them how did they get so strong in a short time period, Yuta replied and said, we cheated. So this is a perfect time to fill in on that month time skip of everything that went down. I'm hoping they take this opportunity, because this story has just went by so fucking fast. And that's why when I talked about comparing it to other anime, I mentioned both Demon Slayer and One Piece, because One Piece is known for being the slowest paced anime of all time. Like, I believe they adapt less than a chapter per episode. Do you know how insane that is? And of course, it has way more depth than JJK, which isn't a problem. JJK, it has enough depth in my opinion for the story it's trying to tell, but it's too fast paced. It's in the opposite direction of One Piece, where it feels like we're missing out on essential character conversation, arcs, and storylines. Small moments matter too within the anime. It's cool to see these fights. It's cool to see them throw hands. It's exciting as fuck. Like I said, the Shibuya incident, probably one of the best arcs in a long time, and we've seen like 10 to 15 fights just within that arc alone. I mean, for reference, let's just talk about Brook and Laboon. When Luffy and them initially meets this giant whale so early on into the show, and they're able to circle it back around with like the 7th, 8th member to join the Straw Hats and connect the dots that build on the history of basically a side character throughout the story, having this level of importance and backstory that just all the fans of the show could feel. And in the hindsight of things, this is a small moment within One Piece in my opinion. They have so many bigger and drastic character moments, yet this one feels so powerful and so impactful, and it feels like this type of depth, the subtle notes that Jujutsu Kaisen just kind of lacks. And people are going to be wondering the reason I said all this or even made this video, and it's because of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Now, this is the show that most people consider the consensus GOAT. But if you ask anyone their favorite anime, it's oftentimes not Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So why does everyone consider it the consensus? And I think it's more of because this, compared to other animes, is the most consistent throughout its entire story and doesn't do anything egregious to ruin it. Like with most other anime, you could point out a direct problem that brings the anime down for you a little, but with Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, they don't really have that problem. But then you also could argue that most other anime, like a One Piece or a Naruto or JJK maybe, the peaks are higher than the peaks in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. But once again, they aren't as consistent. So when you think about it in that terms, if an anime is always lacking one thing, and something like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood never was, how is any anime ever gonna pass it up as the consensus GOAT? And I see this conversation time and time again, and once again, everyone has their favorites. It's not everyone's GOAT anime, but it is the consensus that everyone just seems to be like, okay, I'll agree with that, or I'm okay with having that, just to not have an argument about it. So I made this video to talk about with these flaws, JJK could possibly never pass it up as the consensus. The manga is damn near over, so most of these problems I mentioned, I don't know if they could actually be fixed. Only time could tell. You guys let me know what you think about this down below. If you made it to the end of this video, as usual, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out.